The Ensemble podcast is intended for professional financial advisors. This content is created in partnership with our sponsor, Net Wealth Investments Limited, ABN 85090 569 109, AFSL 230975, and is limited to publicly available information. Before acting on any general advice, you should consider whether appropriate and obtain financial advice from a qualified financial advisor. Ensemble does not hold an AFS license and does not provide any financial advice or services or endorse any general advice. If a PDS or IM exists, you should obtain a copy and review it thoroughly before making a decision.
AdviceTech. As if it wasn't enough to be across TMDs, alpha, beta, rule of 72, and all the other nuances of financial advice. Now, advisors are expected to be across all the technology options too, and there's so many of them. But never fear, Peita D is here. Join me each week on a journey of discovery through the software and apps on offer for advisors and advice businesses. So let's dive in, fellow advice explorers.
This podcast is proudly sponsored by NetWealth. Imagine a world where you can offer clients access to local and international investments. A world where you can engage with clients meaningfully, backed by powerful data and insights with mobile-friendly technology. A world where you can build business efficiencies through scaled managed accounts and bulk reporting. And a world where you can get all the latest news, research and insights to spot the changes that really matter. Wealth is more than just money. It's about opportunity and progress. A world of opportunity awaits you at netwealth.com.au/woo.
Hello and welcome to the Ensemble AdviceTech podcast. I'm Peita Diamantidis, and the guest joining me here today to deep dive into REVEX has experience in telecommunications, which is interesting, but has also worked and run a financial advice practice, but is actually here in his role as COO of an AdviceTech solution. So thank you so much for joining me on the show, Yul Hardick. Woo!
My pleasure. Thank you. Warm introduction.
Well, we've got an easy win before we clobber you with the tough questions, right? So catch you unawares.
Yeah.
So we're going to dive into REVEX, which we will in a second. But we love in the Ensemble community to get to know our guests through their own use of technology when we kick off. So let's start with emojis. What is your most used emojis? Do you even use emojis?
Yeah, I'm a fan of using emojis. Very quick and simple ways to express yourself. But I'd have to say my most used is the boring thumbs up,
yep.
which I think is pretty common, the way to, acknowledge that you understand something or agree with something. So, yeah, it'd be the thumbs up or the love hearts. I either like what you're saying or I love it. That's pretty much it.
Perfect. Well, that's all about simplicity, right?
Yeah.
So then, we live with our smartphones, permanently attached to us. I think some of us would actually have it permanently attached if it was possible. If you had to wipe everything off your smartphone and just keep 3 apps, which ones would you keep?
3 apps. 2 that I'd use on a daily basis that I'd probably want to keep would be Airmail.
Right.
Which is an email application, just like your Gmail or your Apple Mail or whatever else. I just prefer that one. It's a paid app. It's got a lot more functionality. I can aggregate all my email accounts in there very easily.
Nice.
So Airmail would be one. Fantastical, which is a calendaring app.
Yes.
Similar, a paid replacement to the standard calendaring apps. Allows me to unify calendars across different accounts and has a bit more functionality, and it syncs with my Mac and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And thirdly would probably have to be, dare I say, Candy Crush Soda.
I love, and kudos for admitting that. I love it. That's fantastic.
Yeah. I was tempted to keep that one to myself, but I thought I'd give you 2 boring ones, so I'll give you a fun one there. Absolutely.
And you know what? It's because I was reflecting the other day on what I would have to keep on my iPad, and for me, it's the Kindle app. Mm-hmm. I'm a speed reader, so I devour books particularly quickly. And
see, that's a good one. I should have thought of that.
Right.
If we're talking about iPad, it'd probably be Civilization 6, actually. So
there you go. So I've got to
go to on the iPad if I've got some downtime.
Love a bit of gamification going on. I love it. Well, let's dive into REVEX, shall we? So I'm pretty confident most listeners will have heard of you guys, but depending on where they've sat in practices or how new they are to the industry, they might not. So why don't we take it up to a high level first and just give us a sense of where REVEX sits in this sort of advice tech space. What category does it generally fall under? Who do you generally get lined up against?
Yeah. So REVEX is essentially a revenue management system. Very much like other players in the industry would include your Compay, PayLogic, Feasly, software or services of that nature. We're also a invoicing and client payments solution.
Yep.
We've got an integrated client payments and client payment gateway option. We also have a rebates module. It's a pretty fleshed out piece of software, but at its core, a revenue management system.
Yeah, okay. And in terms of, how it sort of came about, I'm betting that the initial problem it was solving was that, one business, multiple providers, multiple commission statement. I mean, in the old days, of course, multiple commission reports or whatever coming from providers. How do we bring it together so we can make any, headway on understanding this data? Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think, in this industry, in this space, it's always been a bit of the bane of an existence for a practice manager or a dealer group is managing all the fragmented commission statements you might get from various platforms and legacy platforms, alongside with the move to fee-for-service models and being able to integrate direct fee payment gateways and billing options, being able to track invoicing as well as revenue against insurance.
Yep.
But probably more important over the past 10 or so years is being able to provide accurate and compliant fee disclosure statements or statements of fees as they were. The industry's always been a bit up and down with these new and wonderful regulations. So it's I think an RMS has always been a necessary evil, but it's probably one of the most important components to running a compliant financial
to be able to rely on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's interesting, and I am, putting you on the spot here, but it's an interesting challenge we've all been faced, all the parties, with fee disclosure, because when, the public hears it, they're like, well, you're disclosing your fees, and like we're all nodding, and well, of course. But, one of the interesting things, for example, for me that came out is the fee the client agrees is X dollars. The fee they see from within their super platform could be X minus $2 a month. The fee, so
many
in fact, and lack of clarity. It's just, and it's none of that is bad intent. That's the thing, right? It's just that, this platform decides they give the benefit of the, credit due to GST and other things, but they net it, whereas the other platform decides, no, we show the fee that's disclosed and then we do an add back, or it's just no wonder the public are uncertain, right?
So many moving parts, even the date on which a client may pay a fee out of their account compared to the date it's actually paid to an advisor, compared to the date it's received to a bank account.
Yeah.
All these conflicting little things. Every platform seems to have their own way of calculating, the RITC on fees in super and all these sorts of things.
Yeah.
If it was just a dollar for dollar equation, you probably wouldn't even need an RMS because it would be straightforward. But I guess to our advantage, there are so many layers from the platform, the dealer group or licensee, the practice, and then the advisor, and then the client. There are many moving parts, and having a system that helps keep all of that in check, organised, structured, and the ability to tidy up and link it to other data and all sorts of things is a huge advantage.
And, while we're sort of on that topic, I am a bit curious about what, you guys might be seeing in terms of, years ago, the number of advice practices that might direct bill a client could probably be counted on one hand or maybe two. But I'm guessing that figure is changing significantly over time, that you guys are seeing far more practices direct charging just because of, well, perhaps because that dynamic is changing and they're more comfortable with that, but also because it's taking out a layer of complexity.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's still a mix across the board.
Yep.
I'd wager that most businesses are still taking platform-based fees in some form or another. But there are a number that have moved solely to fee-based or fixed-term contracts, billing the client directly, or a combination of both. Some, for some items, perhaps one-off fees for the, creation and presentation of an SOA or some specific piece of advice can be billed directly to a credit card or by direct debit to the client. Other things are invoiced but paid via the platform or through a vehicle such as a self-managed super fund or whatever else, which, at the end of the day, as long as the client is aware of the fees, where they're coming from and have consented to it, REVEX as a software allows that to happen. And I think, to our credit, we recognised that these were some of the moves happening in the industry, and we've developed REVEX and continue to develop those parts of REVEX specifically to accommodate what we think the future of a statement of fees, client disclosure, and all that will eventuate.
Will look like.
And
so I'm curious actually for you too internally, because and there's a few system sort of categories like this in the industry where you almost sort of have two masters in that, there could be a own AFSL dealer group, business that you're dealing with, practice. So that's, sort of linear, and that's great. But then you will also have a relationship with a dealer group that then has practices underneath that. And while the requirement, there's lots of overlap, I'm curious how you balance the demands or even the development demands between the two. Like it's some of they're going to need different things, right? And so I'm curious how that works internally and how that's evolved. And I'm guessing that perhaps there's been a bit of a shift to a bit more attention on the individual practices, only because there's more and more of, boutique AFSLs going on, that's becoming sort of more consistent. So how do you guys manage that internally in terms of the demands on the future of, REVEX?
Yeah, you're right. There are sort of, and we cater to both. I mean, REVEX is, I think you're still not allowed to say independent, but we're agnostic in terms of the technology stack we work with.
Yeah.
And I think that has certainly appealed to the boutique AFSLs in Australia. But we cater to, all sizes. We've got big dealer groups and we've got small self-licensed people. But the two types of users, the two power users or groups of users we have in REVEX would be those licensee level users who are generally the recipients of all the commission statements, the recipients of all the data, the bank transactions, and have to work their magic to marry all that data together and basically present it for, on payment or deduction of fees and whatever else down the track. So it's the licensee level users that are the data wranglers, if you like. And as you said, the sort of more emergent users in the REVEX space are the practice managers, the advisors, the people who log in, want to look at the revenue per advisor, per client, want to go in and create invoices or charge a fee to a client or, give a client an email to pay their bill, but also business intelligence. It's almost everyone we talk to lately is just on the bandwagon about business intelligence and data analytics. At a dealer group level, obviously that's important. The licensees want that data as well, but the practices and the advisors need it. They need it. So, in terms of the power users, the licensees are the data wranglers. They get it in there, they get it clean, they make the payments. The advisors and the practices are the ones that want the reporting, the extensive access to their data, and the integrations with other layers in the tech stack. And certainly our development is catering towards both. We're constantly fleshing out integrations with other CRMs, for example.
Yep.
And certainly improving our reporting module and fleshing out our API to enhance the possibility of better information, better enabled advisors putting together their own reporting, their own business intelligence, and better serving their clients ultimately with real, live, structured data.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's an interesting it's an interesting evolution of these things where, some years ago, a lot of this, I guess, data was the advisor or the practice was a sort of passive recipient, if you know what I mean. Like it was just, this is just a summary of where the income's coming from. Like it was sort of just it was quite a passive summary of information.
So this is what I'll show you.
Yeah, exactly. Job done, until next month or whenever it comes through. But, the sort of things now that are becoming more real is if you've got a direct fee, and it might be, say, monthly fee, being able to have flags such that if something happens and, the payment drops off or it's somehow broken, that connection, then, not finding out when you do a review in 9 months, it's this sort of stuff is evolving into a different way we're all going to have to operate. And like you say, that we're going to have our systems talk to each other so that then those flags can be raised, Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that sort of the fragmentation in the industry in terms of every platform having their own format for a revenue statement or a commission statement, paired with the need for advisors to be able to charge clients directly through some sort of payment gateway or, flesh out an invoice where the client can click a link and basically self-directed update their credit card or direct debit authority, those sorts of things are becoming essential. Like Stripes or Chargefies or you name it, these sorts of subscription management solutions that have been around for other industries for
a long time
are now essential parts of any financial planning practice and need to be integrated into that larger fragmented structure.
So on that front, actually, let's imagine there's a practice out there. They're in the throes of building a wonderful cash flow coaching program, one-to-many. It's going to be a 9-month sort of program, and they've decided to spread that cost for the attendees over, say, 9 months for a monthly amount. So it's this term, 9 months spread, almost to buy the program. Like you do all sorts of other things where we learn email marketing or we learn, all these things we buy online that can be a charge for a certain amount. Is that something that can be set up within REVEX now, or is it something you guys are working towards?
Yes, we do that at the moment. So we've got the ability to create, we call them ongoing plans in REVEX. Other industries would call it sort of a subscription or or ongoing service fee, that sort of thing. So, absolutely. In REVEX, anything from a fixed-term contract to an open-ended contract for whatever service can be built into REVEX, clearly specified. Email the client copy of the invoice. Say if it's, a couple of $100 each month, sends them the invoice each month. They've got the opportunity to update their payment details if there's a connected payment gateway through our APay module. And the client can manage it directly. If the advisor's sitting down with the client and has the time and the patience, they can enable the client to update the details there and then in the office. But I think today, the most accepted form is to email a secure link and let the client do it in their own time.
100%. And I mean, I'm hoping everybody out there is the last thing I want to be doing is collecting details I don't need of somebody's, whether it's their credit card or their, none of us want it. No, bad.
But just people would send their credit card information over an email or you're collecting it over the phone.
But that's the thing, right? It's fraught with danger. So I'm with you. If there's something that's set it up and then the client can go away and set up that payment and off they go, there's a level of liberation to that I think is probably a bit untapped in the industry. I think we probably haven't quite got to the point where lots of people are doing that because we're so used to it being via product, even if it is a fixed dollar. We're so used to doing it that way that we're not seeing these other opportunities necessarily. I think
we're still sort of in that transition phase too of still using platforms.
Right.
And admittedly, if you charge a fee through a platform, you can still marry it up to an invoice charged through REVEX.
Yep.
But certainly, it does seem like the missing piece has been a payment gateway integrated client billing solution specifically for advisors, which is why we built our APay module in the first place.
Okay. Yeah. And you're right. It's something that's been around, ages elsewhere.
In other industries,
Yeah. Every time you buy anything really online, you're going through a payment gateway. I mean, as a rule, I'm generalizing there, but that's really how. So really, it's just a way for clients to directly interface with a money collection facility.
So I've seen some businesses using Xero to invoice their clients and whatever else too, and linking that up to a Stripe or whatever else. But it does get complicated for AFSLs because you sort of have two levels of payments and receipts if you're paying multiple advisors or multiple practices, as well as dealing with billing for the clients of said advisors and practices. It does require a special set of tools to manage that properly. Yeah.
And then in terms of then you were talking about integrations with CRMs and look, we're all on that journey, aren't we, about real integration as opposed to token push of data one way or the other. Then before we dive into what they are, and I think that would be, something we should definitely cover, I'm curious, as you guys have gone down that path, is there any lessons of, what practices are better prepared from their data end? Like, has there been any work that, on the practices side they've had to do to make that worthwhile or make it, really valuable as opposed to, we've got the integration. Oh, but crap, our data's not good enough. It's not going to, we've got some work to do. Is there any sort of insights that you could bring on that front?
Yeah, definitely. I think, it's probably not unusual in this industry to have unclean data somewhere, whether it's in your CRM of choice or in your RMS or an email campaign manager. It's not uncommon to have unclean data, and a lot of the reason that data isn't clean is because it's never been properly integrated or connected with other data, or in terms of if you have to move data from one layer of your tech stack to another. It requires a number of steps that can either make it a little bit too hard or too difficult to get it cleaned and correct. And that's not a new problem. That's been a problem for 10, 15 years. The industry has always battled with the freedom of their data and being able to access it on their own terms. One thing I think that is a big advantage with REVEX is that we have a very focused core mission, and that is to be the best of breed in the RMS space in the Australian market. We don't want to be a CRM. We don't want to be anything other than focusing on revenue management and client billing and advisor payments. That whole brokerage commissions space, that's our sweet spot. And I think there's certainly value in staying focused on something specifically, that old Steve Jobs mentality. Don't try and do everything because you'll do it half as well as the one thing you do is actually good. And that's certainly the focus with REVEX. And the advantage for us there is that we can be agnostic. We work with everyone in the landscape. We work with Iris, we work with Plutosoft, we work with IntelliFlow more recently. We just want to deliver the best of breed solutions to our clients. And part of that, my frustration, I think, from previous lives gone by is that as a bit of a nerd myself, I've always wanted to use the best software, the world best option for any particular piece, be it a MailChimp or something for email campaign management, to maybe Salesforce for a CRM, all these different things, but they would never play well with each other. You know what I mean? It's always a challenge. You could in your mind you can create the perfect tech stack and say, I'll use this for that, I'll use REVEX for an RMS, blah blah blah, and then you go and try and plug it together. And unless you're a developer yourself, the whole thing starts to become a little bit bigger than Ben-Hur.
Yeah.
But I think that challenge has not been unique to me. It's certainly been a frustration echoed around the industry for over a decade, and it's coming to a point now where the competitive advantage for any layer in that tech stack is how well it talks to other software.
Yeah.
And that's certainly a focus for REVEX. We just want to be an RMS. We're focused on being the best possible RMS and client payments and advisor payment solution in the space. And that is largely driven on our integration with the other layers in the tech stack.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think it's, we're all talking about it now, and it's certainly a key element of, it's a category that I've got on my little list of questions. It's a whole category is integration in AdviceTech and what we're covering when I interview people. But like you say, when you look at the amount, when you sit back and sort of watch your practice from afar and you see how much time, energy, and in particular frustration occurs because of the lack of integration, it becomes, you become a bit religious about it. It becomes an obsession because that's not what I'm actually paying them for. That's not actually why they're there. And it's not actually these are wonderful people that work for all of us, and they should be doing the wonderful thing of engaging with our clients and getting them great outcomes. And instead they're sitting there ready to throw their computer across the room because of the lack of it talking to other systems, and that stuff. I'm right there with you. So on that point then for you guys, I'd imagine there's this sort of big regular players, like you mentioned there, that you sort of naturally integrate with it because you'd have a lot of users that do that. If there's a CRM that's a bit further down the list or it's less popular, how does that work for you guys? How can somebody then try and get an integration for something that's a little more unusual? Yeah.
Again, the advantage to us is we're not owned by any particular CRM, and we're a small to medium-sized business, so we can be relatively quick and agile to jump on opportunities in the market. We've got a very flexible and talented development team.
Awesome.
If we're onboarding a client who has something we haven't encountered before, a CRM that's new to the market, or a different method of payment gateway or whatever it is, we're pretty quick to adapt and develop an integration. That being said, I think we've probably been exposed to almost everything that's out there to date. So we've got a pretty
challenge.
clear idea.
I'm hearing a challenge, listeners. I'm hearing a challenge.
Email me a list later. I'll let you know. Ultimately, the whole point is we want to be the best at what we do in terms of revenue management, providing payment options for advisors, and the emergent need of that practice level user needing better access to data, better reporting, business intelligence, integrated payment options. Those are the things that are driving a lot of our current development.
Yep.
And similarly, it's what other layers in that tech stack, CRMs or whatever else, other businesses are getting the exact same feedback from their clients.
Yeah.
So I think we're coming to a bit of a golden age in terms of technology in the financial advice industry, because we're moving away from the horizontally integrated offerings to being very focused on it's the advisor's data, no more black box systems. Everyone's fleshing out their API offerings. And I mean that everyone in the industry is trying to develop some sort of open API architecture to better integrate, because it is the competitive advantage that will ensure the survival of any layer in that tech stack over the next 5 to 10 years. And we're definitely ahead of the curve on that piece, I think.
And it's what's interesting is probably revenue management has been, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I would have thought from a practice perspective, it's been a bit further down the list in terms of us sort of focusing on that demand, like going, hey, we want it to integrate. But when I think about it, the data you guys collect and collate has far less dimensions than a lot of the data that is elsewhere. So really it only falls into a couple of categories per client, so each client can only have a couple of, there's complexity to it. I'm not underrating that, but it's more the volume of the data that's the issue as opposed to the number of headings, if you get what I mean. Whereas some of the other integrations, I can understand why it's a bit tough because it's like, wow, there's a lot of potential columns in that thing, like it's like, wow, it can be all sorts of things and all sorts of activities. Whereas for all, there's a lot of volume. It's like, it could be monthly payments on a premium, all sorts of things that comes through. Really, the dimensions are quite limited, which is a positive. That means that integration is possible because you're not trying to jam, a round peg into a octagonal hole. So it's, I think that's.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. But that being said, like we spoke about earlier, the fragmentation in the delivery of this information from platforms and the like. Yeah. That is the layer of complexity.
Correct. And I guess that's my point is you guys are doing a whole lot of hard work for the data in. That's where a lot of the hard work for your solution comes from. Whereas what we haven't really, I think, cottoned onto is the next step, which is the data out, or connected to us, maybe isn't the massive leap in our heads we thought it was, and so that's why we've pushed it down the list when I think maybe, we should all be focusing on it a bit more to get real advantage of that granular insight.
Absolutely.
That we may not be getting right now.
We're really coming into an age where I think, the likes of the online services, like Power BI in Microsoft or Tableau, these analytics and data aggregation softwares are becoming very accessible to end users. And we've got a generation of advisors and practice managers and dealer group CEOs coming through now that have a lot more technology nous than previous generations. Yeah. So the solutions are becoming better scoped and more defined.
Correct.
And ultimately, it's up to these software providers like REVEX and the CRMs out there and whoever else to cater to those needs. Yeah. Or else the market will go and develop their own.
Correct.
Because it's becoming very much a possibility, right?
Yeah. And I think, you're right. I think it's our ability these days to enunciate what we want is clearer because we're exposed to more options, even if it's not in our industry. We're like, yes, but, the way it works when I do that, whether it's buying and, an outfit or it's whatever, like that seems to work. Can we do that here? We're exposed to much more of it now. So I agree. I think our ability to scope in that sense, and certainly from a practice, maybe a practice manager level, they're getting so good at granular process understanding that the ability to say, I need those things to do this 4 times and then that, and this is how, like.
And just the volume of data now that seems to be flowing across people's desks is creating a lot of, what would you call it, spreadsheet fatigue. Yes. Most practice managers are pseudo-advanced Excel users that at some point they just get fatigued and say there's got to be an easier way to do this. There's only so many power queries or pivot tables I can create before,
correct.
Like you said, I want to fall in half.
Correct. Now, let's talk about, you've got a whole lot of people on REVEX and users and maybe focus on it at a practice level. Are there any features or services you guys sort of have as part of the package that you find maybe doesn't get taken advantage of but you think is a bit of a gem? Like, is there anything that really people should look under the hood there because there's some magic that they could take advantage of? Yeah, look, we've got quite a number of licensees of all sizes as clients, and a huge number of practices, and everyone seems to have their own favourite piece or their own flavour. In my opinion, a couple of the unsung heroes of the REVEX software would be what makes it a little bit more than just an RMS, and that would be what we call our APay and Pay My Bill modules. Yep. Which is effectively catering to people who create those ongoing invoices or fixed-term contracts or one-off fees and program those schedules into REVEX. Right. And have it connected to a payment gateway so that it's all seamlessly integrated. It eliminates the need for having to import, these fragmented statements from various suppliers as well, because it automatically matches. Right. Perfect. It's all driven through REVEX. Yeah. I certainly think it's the only one of its kind in the Australian market today that does that for the financial advisor space. And the people who use it swear by it. The people who don't use it probably just don't know about it yet. Yeah.
Another area, I haven't seen too much of it, but rebating clients.
Yep.
It's a functionality we've built into REVEX, the ability to rebate clients and to manage that process and the payments and so forth directly in the REVEX software. You create the ABA file, you upload it to your bank, and it splits out the payments just like you would for advisor payments or staff payments, those sorts of things. There hasn't been too much demand for that. I don't think many businesses are really looking at that, but the ones that do swear by it, obviously it's more of an ethics concern or a business state, and we do it.
Yeah, okay.
And, if there were businesses that were looking at delivering client rebates, that is, for example, rebating everything that's paid by our platform and billing the client directly through APay, it's a feature that we currently have, and I would like to see more utilisation of it, especially for businesses that have been thinking about moving to a pure fee-for-service model.
Right.
And a client direct billing engagement is definitely something we've been running and can accommodate.
And that's an interesting tool to have, if somebody's transitioning to that, because there's always that middle ground where some of it has been the old way and some's the new way. And, it can always get a bit messy. So to have that facility there such that either way in that transition you're covered can make a big difference because it can get messy truly. But like you say, it's, this provider, you give them notice here, but there's still 2 payments that come through, or then like all that stuff can just be so messy. So to have a way that, we'd know that we could rebate and that would all be handled, that's really positive.
Yeah, it's massive. And it's just something that can become a little bit complicated, which is why I imagine it hasn't been a popular path for many businesses. Because the complexity of managing something like that does need some bespoke tools, but they're tools that we have. So if there's anyone out there wanting to rebate clients, jump on board. I suppose that also leads to what we were talking about before around fee disclosure statements or statements of fees and whatever that'll turn out to be over the next 5 or 10 years.
Yeah.
And I've had the great fortune of seeing various implementations of fee disclosure statements of fees and the like across many different dealer groups and how they're managed. None of them are ever very easy to administer or pull together. But, and this is probably more of a personal opinion, I look at something like REVEX and I think, well, all the data really is in REVEX. And I'd like to see probably more use of REVEX for producing fee disclosure statements and statements of fees, because that's the source of the data in REVEX. To me, it just makes sense to cleanly develop client-facing statements of fees out of the software that holds the data.
Yep.
That being said, we talked about integration before. We integrate with almost all the CRMs to produce options to generate FDSs out of other softwares as well.
Yeah.
But I do think it's more of an RMS concern than anything else, and I would like to see that develop over time as well. We have an FDS option inside of REVEX, and we're actively developing that to accommodate whatever direction businesses go in terms of being able to produce statements of fees.
Yep.
But it's always top of mind. It's what's driven regulation over the past 10 years. I think being able to clearly define the fees you've collected, when they were collected, what they were collected for with clients. So it's not going away anytime soon.
No, it's not. I do think that, one of the things that I'm curious about is because there's a second half of that activity, which is then, renewal or consent. And right now, we're very much at the mercy of every platform, assuming, that fee is paid out of a platform, then we're very much at the mercy of the platform. And so there's rumblings I'm hearing that's very early stages of people trying to get to the point where, and I'll use you guys as an example, where in fact the FDS/consent that got generated would end up having a button the client could say yes, and I agree that I'd like to continue for 12 months, and that would then push to the product provider. Like the direction would be the other way. And it'd say, yes, the client's continuing. It's not for new stuff. I get that for a brand new fee or a change to the fee, forms and all that rigmarole is required. I get it. But if there's something in place and all the client is saying, yes, please continue, then it makes a lot of sense that would actually be pushed to the provider from one place, as opposed to us individually doing these ridiculous forms. And like it's all a bit, it's sort of a bit embarrassing, to be honest, the rigmarole that goes into all of that. Like lots of clients are just, really? This seems really hard. I'm like, it really is, this is a bit silly. So
a piece of paper and all the rest of it. Yeah. And I think, platforms, access to APIs for platforms is going to be a big thing over the next couple of years.
Is.
To some extent, it's already a thing overseas.
Yep.
Even in terms of revenue management, instead of getting these ridiculous CSVs or PDFs emailed across every so often or downloading out a website and having to upload that into RMS, connect straight to the source and suck that data straight out of a platform's database. I mean, those are things where that are on our radar and we're talking to platforms about at the moment. And I know Iris have a project as well, which for similar reasons, they want to be able to direct things out of Xplan, feed payments via platforms and whatever else.
Right.
But it's got to be a broader market engagement. If platforms want to be the ones that charge a fee, take a fee and pay out the fee, that sort of integration with an RMS and a payments gateway like REVEX is crucial.
Yeah, it is.
Sure, has to be integrated.
Yeah, and what's interesting too is, we're in the game of finance, and it's sort of hysterical that the information on our own business's finance is only historical, in that we only really get it after it's happened. Like it's like, surely in finance we'd have a more because like you're saying, if we all got better at that and it was more of a sort of a live feed, which is sort of what you're saying, right? It'd be more of a live interconnection, then cash flow for advice practices and being able to, manage that. But it would suddenly transform the way you could run a business, because it's not after the fact and, I wonder why that particular payment was half what it was last time. Like it's all sort of unknown right now. Like whereas being able to, see that and, a smart tool using a bit of AI perhaps would be able to predict that and go, oh, wait a minute, in 3 weeks, we reckon there's going to be something there that's a bit unusual. Let's, it would be preemptive, which would be fabulous.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you already see that a little bit with tools like My Prosperity and the like, where they connect directly to the bank account and you can create some rules around categorizing transactions, budgeting and whatever else. But it certainly needs to be something that's applied to the revenue management space in financial services in general, not just financial planning. Like broking is another area.
General insurance, I'm sure, is the same.
Some technological advancement.
Yeah.
But ultimately, these are areas where, the platforms, if they want to continue to stay relevant, and I'm sure they will, need to be engaging with the technology stack directly.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
Yeah. And just see it as part of a given. If you're going to play in this space, this is how we do it. Yeah. Is there anything? Yeah, exactly. Is there anything else looking forward that you guys have got on the development plan, or you've sort of got on the radar that's going to be, coming up that you'll either add into the suite or upgrade or change it?
Yeah, as we were talking about, I mean, we've covered off a lot in this talk actually. But, some of the key things on our development pipeline at the moment are further fleshing out our integration options. So being able to deploy our API and connect it with anyone who's willing quite easily.
Yep.
In terms of being able to deliver business intelligence at a practice level, a dealer group level, and whatever else, and to just be able to use that REVEX data however you want. It's your data. However you want to use it, go for it. We're all for that open interconnectedness. And also working with other layers in that tech stack, be that CRMs, be that various marketing or campaign management softwares, or whatever opportunity we can to make this data more useful to businesses.
Yep.
We want to be engaging in that space. So we're actively working to make that a lot easier. There's also, we've done quite a bit of work in that integration with payment gateways space to create a fleshed out, we call it the APay module inside of REVEX, so that you can create these ongoing plans, these invoices, and manage all of that from one place.
Awesome.
And obviously the reconciliation piece there is much easier because the data goes out from REVEX, comes straight back into REVEX, it matches against itself. It's a piece of cake. So I'd really like to think that over the next year or so, we'll have a number of big announcements on enhancements in that area too.
Awesome. Well, we'll wait with bated breath to hear about those down the track for sure. Is there any of the features we've missed? I mean, I know there's also, I'm aware you guys also have so currently for the listener that doesn't understand, there's all these files that come through in terms of revenue. We've got to load them up, all this sort of process. My understanding is you guys can also take on some of that. So if somebody just wants to go, hey, I need you to upload and get all of that done, that's something that REVEX can do for a practice if they choose to sort of take that extra step. Is that correct?
Yeah. So REVEX is a software. Separate to that, we've got our ComCentral business, which is outsourced brokerage services.
Yeah. Okay.
Whether the business is using REVEX or ComPay or whatever the software solution, ComCentral's agnostic. Obviously, we prefer REVEX.
Yeah.
I'm not going to twist your arm because your choice.
Yep.
But yeah, we absolutely have an option to alleviate that burden in businesses as well, because brokerage has become quite a science today. So we definitely have a team of experts that can look after that internally as well.
Perfect. Anything else we've missed? I feel like we've covered most of the highlights.
No, I think it's been a great conversation. Thanks for having me. It's been lovely.
Not at all. You are very welcome. All right, Advice Explorers, if you'd like to find out more about REVEX, then the website link is in the episode show notes. You know how this works. But along with Yul's LinkedIn details, now I'm sure he's not actually the person that's going to be answering your queries, but he can probably point you towards the person that can. So reach out and ask. And remember, he challenged us to find a CRM that they're not yet connected to. So I feel like we need to, help him out there and send some suggestions through. Exactly. Go on. Thank you so much for joining me here today and sharing how you guys are playing. I know it's possibly an unsexy part of AdviceTech, but it's fundamental to us all being able to keep the doors open. So thank you so much for sharing your insights. Yeah. Exactly. Thanks so much, Yul. Okie dokie. This revenue management stuff, huh? We've had a couple of episodes now on this. So, after the homework from last week, have you worked out what your practice is using? Are they a REVEX user? Are they a Feasly user? One of the other providers? Make sure find out what system they use, and perhaps even do some digging into what features are being used within the business. Because while I fully understand that practice managers and maybe the dealer groups are actively doing that work for you, perhaps it is worth understanding what's possible. So whatever tool you've got, understanding what's possible, understanding that perhaps you can set up a 6-month direct debit for a particular program somebody's going on, or something for their adult kids that they can register them for, or like there's all these tools we have available to us that don't require us now, as it sounds, to have other payment gateways, other ways we're going to have to organize that. So do the digging, ask the questions, offer to understand better those systems, just so you can understand what data you've got, what opportunities you have, and how things might work in your practice. Also, if you've come across something wonderful or a great way of using the tool, or gee, this thing does FDSs really well, please share it on the Ensemble platform. We've got to crowdsource this stuff. It's truly invaluable to hear from another practitioner, and it could be a support person who said, actually, I worked out how we can do this particular nuanced thing in our practice. Share it, please. The more we all do that, then the more we can truly lift up the industry as a whole and just get really humming in the way that we can engage with the public. Now, in terms of my thoughts, about our conversation there, something that sort of stood out for me is well, look, it's an unsexy topic again. Here we go, Peita, which is, data, quality of data, and how we handle that in our practices. This is something that often we can get very grouchy and focused on when we are moving systems, for example, or trying to integrate systems, but it's not something we're generally aware of as we go along. Whereas I would encourage you to consider data quality an ongoing mandate that's set within the practice. And what I mean by that is, with something you could go and dig into, maybe your core CRM, whatever you use, go and find the mobile phone field and see how many different ways people are entering that in. Are they entering? And it depends on the CRM. Some of them won't let you do it but any but one way. But for some of them, some people are going to enter them 4 numbers space, 3 numbers space, 3 numbers space. Some are going to enter them all in one big long number. Some are going to enter them as plus 6, 1, 4, 1, 2, right? If you've got multiple ways that your team are entering data into the one field, then you're going to need a data mandate, something that just says for these key fields, this is the way we enter that data. Yeah. And what's going to happen as you start to become aware of this is you're going to see how many places the one thing can be represented in 6 different ways. And those things may seem small, and they are until you need them not to be, until you're trying to connect to something else. And, on the mobile phone front, if you want to have automated SMSs coming out of the system as follow-ups, or click to call because you've put all of the calls into cloud computing and you want it to click and then the phone just starts ringing for the individual maybe working from home or even in the practice using cloud phone systems, then that only works when that data is really clean. And if it's not clean, that's when it causes hiccups in these wonderful productivity and efficiency gains. So, just start to look. Use the mobile feed as an example, but there'll be other fields where there just simply isn't consistency in the way your team are utilizing them or the information they put in. This is the first layer is those really sort of specific fields like a mobile number, date of birth, those things that have construct. The second layer of, data mandates is how you use some of the text fields that you have in your practice. And you might have some fields that you're typing things in, but some people are using it for one-word notes and some people are using it for long sentences and something like, the more you become aware of that, the better quality the data you're going to have. It's going to be far more clean, which means it's far more useful down the track, and you're going to be able to trigger and engage with it in all sorts of ways. So that's sort of my mission for you, is start to become aware of everything in your CRM and the fact that it is an opportunity to be data that can be analyzed and collated and use it to trigger things later. So start with the mobile field. Just go and check it out. Maybe in your practice in your CRM, it's not an issue. So look for another field where you think, oh, hold on, that looks like people are entering that different ways, and just start considering that and debating it in the team. Now, for today's Curiosity Corner discussion, I've actually got something a little different for you to take a look at. I accidentally came across this website, and website is an exaggeration. It's really just a landing page, but it's basically been set up to represent the wealth of the super rich shown to scale, so that people can get a sense of, if you're Bezos, if you're these Bill Gates, what does that mean compared to the rest of us? What does that actually mean? And, what could they potentially be doing with it? So the website is called number one Pixel Wealth. And the best way to find it is just to Google one Pixel, Pixel Wealth. We'll also include the link in the show notes. So if you're out and about driving and you can't write that down, the link will be in the show notes. But really this website itself is all about highlighting wealth inequality, right? And that's what the messages embedded in it are all about. But I'd love you to take a look at it as a really interesting example of how, with a relatively, actually really simple graphic and way of representing something, you can get across a message that actually holds a fair bit of complexity and nuance and has a lot of views and storytelling underneath it, and it's a topic that I think lots of consumers actually struggle to grasp or get their heads around. How wealthy are the uber wealthy, and what does that actually mean? And why does that make them want to build rocket ships? I'm just kidding. But I'm being cheeky there. But, I just wonder whether as advisors, we could start to think about what great insights we could give the public if we could put together some imagery like this that could help them understand concepts, whether that's compounding, whether that's, these things that we see as fundamental and that would help them really get a grasp of a core truth. Is there a way we could do that with some cleverness and sense of humor, and a simple graphic representation? And when I say graphic, I don't mean graph, right? This is about graphic as in a drawing that captures something. So I challenge you to check it out. Like I said, One Pixel Wealth. But, as you're looking and having a bit of fun with it, and just notice how simple it is, how it's getting across messages, and then think about what could we do similarly on a different topic that could be incredibly valuable for the people we interact with. Well, that's all we've got for this week, folks. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you'll get your AdviceTech fix automatically sent to you each Friday. And if you feel like, your practice is sort of stuck in a rut on the processes you have and the tech projects you think you need going forward, maybe you feel a need to step back and do some planning for the year ahead, then I'd love to facilitate a brainstorming session for your team on sort of drawing out the next best projects for the business, maybe what tech could assist you with those projects, and then we can, get the team all working together to innovate in an ongoing sense within the practice. So if that sounds something that's just right for you right now, then please reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's LinkedIn/PeitaMD, PEITAMD. Otherwise, I'll look forward to turning up in your earbuds next week. And remember, Advice Explorers, stay curious.